So you'll be able to find this photo in the resource guide. You can download this starry image photo from pexels.com. And what I like to do, I love to use space photography to add kind of a rich texture to water and other kind of elements. So I'm going to go ahead and drag this photo in. It's going to be gigantic. So I'm going to zoom out and go ahead and get it to the right size. So I have my space photo on top of here. We're going to use a few blending modes to try to blend this in a little nicer. So once again, we're using blending modes a whole lot in this class. So I'm up here and I'm going to try to preview what I think would look really good. So let's kind of preview. So far lighten is looking pretty good. Screen looks a little too washed out. That's too harsh. So we're just kind of going in. Looks like overlay or soft light. Soft light is something I really use a lot because it's really a blend of not too dark and not too washed out. That's really interesting right there, color. But so it just depends on what you're going for. I think soft light is going to be the winner. And we're just going to take our eraser tool, make it nice and big. And we're just going to trim off the rest of this texture that we don't need anymore. We don't need that anymore. We don't need it up here and we don't need it down here. Just get rid of all that excess texture. I'm also going to get rid of the texture down here below because I believe there's like some kind of landscape that was getting in the way. Don't want that to show through. So there we go. It's really starting to come together. There's a couple other things. We can add our own bubbles. So we can, maybe you don't need the texture over the entire glass. Maybe it's only on certain parts. You can always just take the eraser tool and get rid of certain areas, just like that. We can add additional bubbles, so I'm going to call this bubbles. We're going to go down to our brush tool, and there's going to be some preset brushes that should come already included with your version of Photoshop. There's special effect brushes. This might be one I downloaded, Kyle's splatter brushes. If so, I'll provide a link in the resource guide to these, or you can download any kind of bubble or circle splatter type brushes to use. So I'm going to use these splatter brushes and I'm going to zoom in, just add a few more bubbles that are going to be around the fish. And I may need to reduce the amount of that texture of the space so it's used a little more subtly because right now it's a little too much of the texture. So here's my bubble layer. I'm just going to pop in a few bubbles. I need to make sure they're white and I need to make sure they're probably small. I'm just going to add a few little bubbles where I think the fish will be. I'm going to have a lot right here. And what's great about adding these bubbles on top of the fish is just one more thing to help bring the fish inside the bottle as opposed to just existing on top of the bottle. So it's just one more element to lay on top of the fish. And so let's go ahead and take our, let's see, where is our, probably should name these better. Bubbles, highlight, there it is. There's our space photo. So I'm going to go ahead and take the eraser tool, or I can just reduce the opacity a little bit so it's not as strong. Get a nice big brush for our eraser tool. Just kind of erase some of the bubbles area, just so it's not quite as intense. It's kind of adding a nice highlight around the fish when I do that. There we go. So now our water is coming together. We can make our water more rich. We can change the color. We have our little color right here. We can simply go up to image adjustments. We can do the vibrance. We can do saturation. We can add more vibrance to our blue. We could desaturate it. We can add more saturation, but I don't want to oversaturate it. But you can go and do anything to your object. So photo filter, you can add a warm tone to it. So you see what that did. That was before. That's after. So that adds a little bit more realism in terms of the color of the water looks more realistic. But if you're going with kind of a magical theme, that looks really bright and beautiful. This starts to tone it down, adds a little orange to that bright blue, and kind of softens it a little bit, doesn't it? So I think I'm going to stick with maybe softening a little bit. I think it looks a little more realistic that way. So I like how the fish is cut out. There's just a few little areas. I might do the same thing where I select this little area and do the same thing where I select the color range, click on OK, and I have that selected, and I just have to deselect this area with a lasso tool because I don't want to cut out all these wonderful areas of the fish. Just trying to isolate that a little bit. Just lassoing. Lasso. I love the lasso tool. It makes selecting a lot easier than the polygon lasso tool sometimes. You don't have as much precision, but it's nice if you're just wanting to circle a few elements really quickly. Press enter, or oops, I need to highlight my fish layer. Press enter and magically it's gone. Oh, we didn't want to select that, so let's deselect all that beautiful top of the fish. And now we're ready to delete. So I just wanted to show you that, how I did that again. And let's go ahead and zoom out. So no one's ever going to look at this really close up. So some of the selections, they don't have to be perfect. This is how they're going to view it. There's one other thing I want to do. This obviously looks like a grayscale image, but we can change that. Next, I'm going to show you how to add some color to our cork. So let's paint on our cork color. I'm just going to create a new layer and name it cork. And we're going to select a brown tone color or tan color that we think would match the color of a cork. So I'm just kind of doing kind of a tan gold color kind of here on the color picker. I'm going to grab my paint tool just like we did the water. We're going to select this and make it a soft light blending mode. So when we paint it on, it's not going to cover it up completely. And we want to make sure we have our soft round brush and make it, that's probably a good size, maybe a little bit bigger. We're just going to paint it on and magically it turns to color. All right, and then we could make it a deeper color because that might not be deep enough. Okay, we can always go to hue and saturation and adjust the hue if we think it has too much green in it, which I think it does. We can bring some more reds and saturate it a little bit more and lighten it. Click OK. And there we go. Now we have a colored cork. So it makes this photo look less like a black and white photo with blue water, but it looks like it's an actual photo. And so one more final touch we can do. We're pretty much ready to go. I could probably add more bubbles and do a whole bunch of stuff. But for this background layer, I wonder if I can go to adjustments and apply a little bit of a photo filter to it. Add a little bit of that sepia. Kind of makes it less of a black and white photo and it makes it a little bit more like a real photo, just a little bit, just so it's not stark black and white. We could do the same thing here. We can even paint a very subtle color around here. But so far I'm pretty happy with kind of how it looks. We can kind of adjust our water one last time. Go to hue and saturation. I mean, we could do any color imaginable if you go to hue. That's what I love about hue and saturation. It's one of my favorite adjustment options. That gives it a little more aqua appearance. I don't know, this is where I really have a tough time being a photo manipulator, is there's so many great options. That looks great, but also the one we had before, I don't know what color to do. They all look great. So so there we have it. There's our little fish in a bottle. I'm going to go ahead and show you the final that I came up with. I just spent another couple minutes with it. Came up with our final. Just added a little bit more highlight to our bottle. I'm going to go up to layer. I'm just going to duplicate our highlight layer. I just really want to make sure that highlight pops out a little more and reduce it. Just kind of messing around with that. So just to really make sure that fish looks like it's inside the bottle and never just hanging out, floating outside the bottle. That's not the point. I wanted to do one more quick thing, and I know I keep adding new things, but this is all showing you new techniques. I wanted to do the same thing we did. We know how we painted. We used the soft blending mode, soft light, to be able to paint the water. Let's paint on another layer to kind of add some highlights and some dynamic effects around the fish. So I'm going to drag this, this layer is going to be highlight or whatever you want to call it. So this is above the fish, and I'm going to add a really beautiful bright orange, something really vibrant. And I'm going to get the paintbrush tool and make it a really big brush. Okay, so right now I have it on soft light. So soft light, paintbrush, and it's a nice soft round brush. So I'm just going to click once somewhere down on the tail to kind of add a little bit of a highlight. So notice how it kind of that's before and that's after. It's really small. It's a really small effect, but it kind of really brings out the fish quality a little bit more. Kind of makes it a little more rich, magical. So I'm clicking and then I'm doing Command Z to kind of go back if I don't like that certain look. Doesn't always have to be orange. It can be pink. Add a little bit more to that pinkness. So whatever you want. I really just like doing the tail a little bit. It doesn't have to be super strong. You can reduce the opacity. Just click once. Kind of bring out some of that effect a little bit. Let me just go back to blue. This is all still the same layer. Kind of darken the fish a little bit with that blue. And that adds things on top of the fish to once again bring that fish more inside instead of floating outside. So I'm happy, I'm finished, I'm done. This is what the final looks like. No more messing around with it. And I'm excited to move on to the next project.